I've known George Smith since the early 1990s when he was building the arcade route business for Namco Cybertainment. I was opening laser tag arenas across America, and we had games in the lobbies. And so George operated the games and provided them for Laserstorm and my licensees in many cases. He was always really tough, but really fair. Like every arcade owner, I wanted the biggest and the best games for my arcade, and he had to manage my expectations along with his capital investment and return on investment requirements. And he did a great job, and I developed a lot of respect for him, and have maintained that respect for him over what's 40 plus years now in the arcade industry. George now runs a company called Family Entertainment Group, which is one of the largest amusement operating companies in America. They design, own, and operate arcades at 20 Great Wolf Lodge locations around the country, Kalahari water parks, as well as movie theaters, and they even have a few of their own standalone FECs. George was a very early adopter of virtual reality. He was one of the first to buy into zero latency and operated two of the first zero latencies in America at Kalahari water parks. Since then, he's gone on to be a prolific operator of virtual reality attractions. He has, in my opinion, the most diverse operating base of different VR attractions. He's tried almost all of them, and he's always willing to share his insights. So I am extremely pleased to introduce George Smith from Family Entertainment Group. So George, welcome to the deep dive. I want to thank you for joining us. And let's start out by going back in time. Take us back to the early days with Namco as a starting point.
Yeah, so it was, I was with Dream Machine. I left, I went for a couple of years to Nancy's sales company, Namco. And then I went to work for Namco. And I moved down to Atlanta and went there as their heading field operations. And so I headed field operations, moved up to Chicago because we acquired Aladdin's Castle, and we acquired a bunch of other chain, which was really brilliant because we were expanding in the mall space quickly. We got up to about 600 mall stores as malls were dying a death and mall arcades were dying. And so then they knew that I had a big mouth. And so we created at Namco, we called internally the OBD department, Oddball Deals Division, which became business development. And so we had about 650 mall stores, and we had to move the equipment. We had 30,000 pieces of equipment, and we had to move them out of the malls as quickly as we could. 4 or 5 years later, we had 1,100 locations in FECs, movie theaters, Walmarts, whatever it might be. And then I left Namco in 2003, and it was a wonderful time there. And a lot of the people that work in FEG, we have many people that were at Namco at that time, but I think they had sort of lost their way. They lost a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit as they were trying to be managed in a very sort of Asian way, if you will. So I left for a couple of years, I was hired by a group that I don't really want to talk about too much. But as the industry is really kind and forgiving, a good friend of mine, Herman Fox, who owned Cleveland Coin Machine Exchange, said, I got a contract that I can't execute on because he was doing at that time Great Wolf Lodges, and he had a radius restriction with them. So he says, I've got this contract for a new indoor water park resort that's coming up in Sandusky, Ohio. And he knew that I was struggling because things hadn't worked out quite. So I worked on that contract, which was with Cedar Fair Corporation. Our first location was Castaway Bay in Sandusky. We opened that up in 2004. Frankly, just applied what had happened for the previous 25 years into that space.
Yeah, interesting. So much gold there to dig into. Let's start with malls. If you're in any industry long enough, you start to see patterns repeat, and you've already hit on one of them, which is malls were all about entertainment in the 80s, and there was this whole movement, and then the malls struggled. Now they're coming back, and one of the big news, especially in the VR space, was Westfield's investment in the Void. What do you see in the mall market that people should be aware of? What are the opportunities, and what are some of the pitfalls they should be watching out for?
It seems like a logical thing that a landlord has space, is willing to rent you at incredible rates compared to what it has been historically, and in many cases, do significant funding, TI money to go with this stuff. At that time, malls we would get the worst space for the highest rent, and they hated us, but they needed us because they liked our customer. And now to see over the last 10 years, the courting of malls for entertainment because they need to fill up the space, and what better thing than entertainment right now. So it's just wonderful to see this return, but it's the same sort of problems. You got to be careful. You got to be careful with the lease you wrote in the 1980s, you got to be even more careful right now with the leases you're running. The reason that malls are struggling is the same thing. People, their patterns have changed so dramatically that if you are not careful about where you place it, if you put it in a C mall, it's a C mall for a reason. Rarely have I seen too many operators that can become a destination on their own merits. They need it in conjunction with something else. Even Dave & Buster's tends to put it in a clustered area where they can get cheaper space, more semi-industrial space, and they would be visible from the main highways and stuff like that, but just off of it. But visibility has and always will be the main driver of why you put something any place. You and I had that case with zero latency where maybe you could put it in a industrial complex and people would find you. And there is a niche market for that, just like there is for escape rooms and competitive entertainment or social entertainment, whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to get a return on their money. And if they have property in a building, they have to get a return. They have to maintain it and go from there. If you are the only thing left in a mall, the theater's gone bust, and the other tenant is a senior healthcare facility that's now opened up in the former Sears, you may be having a problem in the future. I'm not saying that's all the case, but if we were, I think the ratio in the United States was something like 5-1 compared to Europe or Australia and things like that in terms of the amount of square footage per person for sales area. And I think if there's one failing that I'd say after 40 plus years of doing this, it's people don't do enough investigation. They don't think longer term. One of the reasons that, in fact, it was an Aussie that said this to me. One of the things why you invest in the United States is Americans can adapt to things more quickly than any place else in the world. You can go from industry A to industry B like that. Because if it's not working here, you can redeploy the capital, the resources and everything. And it's also maybe good that Americans have short-term memory. So you get through COVID more quickly than Europeans do and things like that. But the bad is it doesn't allow you the time to dwell on, is this a right investment for myself? Am I going to get a return on this the way I need to for investing? And now, I can't believe the costs of equipment that we're buying right now, if we can get it. If the average piece before COVID might have been $8,500, $10,000, that same piece now is $15,000 plus and moving north if you can get it. And if wages really haven't moved in the same stair step, it means that something's out of balance here and you're going to pay the piper at some point.
So, that just directly hits into pricing strategy. And there's a couple of areas I want to talk to you about. We'll start with, are you able to pass any of that along yet? Where's that money being absorbed right now? Is that just hitting your balance sheet and you're just sitting on it? Or are you raising prices? Eventually, we're going to see we're already seeing wage inflation, right? And so we saw this in the 90s too, where, we had massive wage inflation that was driven by productivity gains. Obviously, now it's being driven by, I think, different things. But how are you handling this from a pricing standpoint?
We question it all the time. We have, as a company, over the last several years, one of the things that made us, I think, attractive in the marketplace to outside money is we invested in technology heavily. And I think our management system is second to none. And we're still developing it daily. But the watchword, and I said this yesterday in a company call, is data or data. We have to find more empirical ways of doing things. It's funny that over the last couple of years, we've used these things. And I talk about it within my family. It'll be great at Thanksgiving about alternative facts. Well, there are no alternative facts. Facts are facts. And so data is data. And so if I think I'm of an older generation that we think there's more art to what we do than there is science. And as it comes to how we price, that's being determined by an awful lot of things. Now, corporately, we are invested in a lot of places that are destinations in and of themselves.
And so what's the difference from a pricing standpoint? Does it just give you more latitude, or do you feel people when they're at a resort are more free spending, or what's the advantage of that?
There is a bit of that. I've been reading this week and various reports about how expensive Disney is right now, and how there was a great story in The Hustle about a father in California having to tell his kids he had promised to take them to Disneyland for the day. But for a family of four, he says that was going to be over $1,000 for a family of four, and that was without food. And so we haven't kept up on that pricing, but I think you suspend belief when you go on vacation, or some people, they do it when they go into a casino and say, well, suddenly I'm richer than I was yesterday because I'm in a casino and they make me feel special and everything else on there. there is a point of that one. The offside of that one is we have our limits, and we've been experiencing that this year. We have tried to make it easier for people to spend. And one of the guys in our company is brilliant at coming up with pithy phrases, but he says there's only one machine in the arcade that makes money, and that's the kiosk. That's the cash register. So what we've tried to be focused on is changing the technology. So our presentation to the public is packaging things so that they can extend their time, get a better deal on the overall, and not so much worry about the individual pricing by piece, because I think that leads you to the dead ends that we're finding right now. I mean, I'm going into places, and I was saying that I remember going and changing from dimes and nickels to what we're doing right now. I walk in and I see some of the prices on our piece, and I go, oh my God, I'm embarrassed myself. And how do you do that when, the play time is, 10 to 15 seconds? That's not real value for $2.50. So you have to balance that out with something else. How do you give them some time and value?
And one of the things I've seen, so we'll dip our toe into the VR space a little bit. I think you guys have done a couple of things. One is you've experimented marvelously with all kinds of maybe the most widest variety of virtual reality attractions of any operator that I know of, certainly from an experimentation. We'll come back to that. I think the first question on pricing is how you've bundled your VR stuff. And this is specifically, I know I went to Kalahari and looked at how you were pricing it there. And I'm assuming it's not going to be terribly different in other places where you run VR. Talk about your bundling strategy, how you price virtual reality and how you drive people to what looks to me like trying to get them to higher tiers by, if you buy here, you get this, if you buy here, you get this, but if you buy here, you get all this VR stuff. And what's the thinking behind that strategy and how's it working?
What we're trying to do is work with the customer and work with ourselves. If I can capture a greater chunk at the beginning, I can give them a greater value and then spread that across the whole. So if the average spend may end up being $100 or $200 or $300 for a visit, if you can do it for a selection of things that you want to do, it allows us to sort of cost average all the attractions that are there and lower the cost ordinarily. And we want to have a lot of experiences. That's one of the reasons that VR was attractive to us, as is we build our own escape rooms or we modify our own escape rooms, and we're doing other things right now, but they're geared to an experience that's, 20, 25 minutes, which is probably the average American's real time span. We all get into watching series or something else like that, but just watch your clock and say, after about 20, 30 minutes, I got to take a bio break, or I got to get something to drink or a snack or something else like that. It works on that with everything else that's there. So if you have too many things that are hour attractions or 45-minute attractions and stuff like that, there's a certain public that will go for that one, but that's not the lion's share. So what I want to do is spread this out over a lot of experiences, have everybody have a good time, and find a way for them to afford it and for us to afford to pay for all that more expensive stuff, and give them an experience that they can't do by sitting on the couch with their 80-inch screen that's probably graphically as good or better than what we're presenting to them.
And so do you find that when you bundle the VR stuff, that do you also offer it on an a la carte basis? And can you talk at all about distribution of purchase between bundled versus a la carte, or any insights around that you're willing to share?
Well, what we're trying to do is sort of go down the line. We're in the midst of this right now, and it involves an awful lot of software change, more than you might think, to make everything sort of like a shopping cart. Here it is, but here's the extra bonus if you do, here's a VR attraction, but if you do 3 of them, the cost per attraction goes down there. Or if you add in, if you're a group of 4, we'll throw in a person free for some of those kind of stuff, and add in all these little things. So even if it's an a la carte decision that's there for an attraction, for rides, for whatever it might be, maybe there's a better option that can save you money. And for us, it's really trying to capture bigger chunks at one point rather than lots of little decisions. And that's why we've had to adapt to going to credit only or mobile apps in some form or fashion. It means that you're changing the whole criteria about how people think about spending. And where possible, we also want to have a better interface with the customer so that we can talk to them. It's hard to get people to sign up for the internet because we all have so many signups and everything we do. But if I can make it worth your while to do that and be able to talk to you after you do that purchase in a passive, proactive way, not one that's disagreeable. I got a message from these guys every 5 minutes. You get pissed off about that stuff. But if you can be a little elegant and thoughtful about it, I think that's where we're going to go. And I think inflation is going to eat at us so much that we have to be really cognizant about how much we're spending on capital investment and how much return we get. And for us, of course, as I would think most operators, our biggest expense is labor. So I got to find a way to deliver those experiences in a better way, make them new, and still be able to afford the people that have to assist in doing that one, which probably in the future means slightly fewer humans for that equation.
Interesting. And look, and one of the things we've seen this before, where the tough times force everybody to change the way they do business, become more efficient, and then business picks up, some of those dynamics go away, and that efficiency falls to the bottom line. And I expect at some point in the future, we'll see that again, hopefully sooner than later, but obviously hard to predict coming out of a pandemic if the labor thing is. I read yesterday that 1 million US workers are out of the workforce due to long COVID. There's 1 million people just out of the workforce. I'm not including people retiring early or people just saying, I don't want to be in the service sector anymore because I'm getting abuse, or all the other reasons there. That was just, that was another data point I saw that really surprised me.
The labor market is so skewed. I was with somebody, I was watching my grandson of 7 years of age pitch at his baseball game last night, and I'm standing with a friend of mine, and he runs a asphalt company, and his workers are a union, and he pays over $50 an hour to start. $50 an hour to start, with benefits, full health care, full insurance, and everything that's there, union protection and everything from there. He can't get workers. People don't show up and go from there. And that's because it's a little bit, there's some back pain probably to the work, and they're avoiding that. And that's at the higher tier. And we have COVID. We've seen this wave in the last 6 weeks. We've had lots of people being hit. Usually it's like a bad cold, but everybody's coming back with a lot of respiratory problems right now. And, it's just unique problems that we're seeing in the labor market we never did before. I was in England a couple of weeks ago, and we were evaluating whether we might take a jump on the pond. And one of the things that scared the death out of me is they cannot get workers. And because of Brexit, they are not getting the flow of foreign workers, Eastern Europeans, Africans, Indians, stuff like that used to supplant some of the work changes that have hit the English economy in Europe and here, where people want to stay home. I have a banker friend in London. He can't get his employees back to work. They are so used to staying at home. He needs them in the office. He's got a showcase and he's got technology. They won't come.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think there was a period of time where we all thought that was unemployment benefits, but those have all gone away and people still aren't coming back to work. And so it's really interesting to see. And I know I've started traveling again, in the hotels, like they're just understaffed. And I went to the dentist this week, and somebody had called out sick, and so they were behind. It's just hitting everybody in every industry. It's shocking.
It's weird. And the world population really hasn't gone down. There are areas where it's been affected. Like most things, it rights itself in time. Inflation goes up. A certain amount of employees will find a way to find a gig work and work at home and stuff like that. And that's changed. And I've got to adapt to that in a great many ways. But at the end of the day, most people will find, I need employment to pay my bills, and that will come around. There's still fear about COVID, fear about being with other people. It's much nicer being at home, if you can do school at home, but we have to be adaptive to that one, which is reducing, not just by efficiency, but by necessity, the number of employees to do the things that are there. And I'd much rather get rid of, I was telling people how we used to count nickels, dimes, quarters, and that kind of stuff, roll them and recycle them. And we used to use tickets in a much more aggressive way than we do right now. And that goes onto a card or onto a phone app or something else like that. All of those things save people from doing dumb work. We'd rather have people do things that are meaningful, to interact with the customers that are there, explain to them how to play better and have a better experience. And I think we get more value out of that one. But yeah, it's a brave new world.
So you mentioned this concept of competitive socialization is being thrown around a lot lately, and I think it was Lucky Strike that kind of first did this with kind of turning bowling into a bar. And now we're seeing, axe throwing and miniature golf and all of these recreational things that we had turn into drinking and food-based social experiences. What's your take on that whole thing? Are you doing any of that? Do you think it's a sustainable trend? Do you think it's a fad? What do you think?
Everything's a fad. It doesn't have, there's very few things that last forever. And so then it comes down to, where are you going to invest in this kind of stuff? Are you ready for the eternal pop-up business, the eternal white space that has to be transformed into something else? And many things are going to work and work very well. When I was in London, one of the reasons I went there is I wanted to see it. There's like 28 or 30 and growing daily. I went to a lot of the miniature golf, indoor mini golf with bar and restaurant. The menu I went to Swingers, which is just off Piccadilly Circus. It looked like Studio 54 with a tape line and everything that's there. And we went in, I was with my wife, and we code check and went upstairs, and they greeted you nicely. And the actual experience for 9 holes was mediocre. The menu, though, was 8 pages long. The bar was just extraordinary. The prices were there. The service was extraordinary. I mean,
Wow.
every 9 holes, and the holes are 20 feet long or 30 feet long, and they're there. Do you need another drink? Do you need another drink? Which is, as they said to me, 45% come from beverage, 15 to 20% is coming from food, and the rest is the attraction that they have there. But the negative for all of this kind of stuff is a barrier to entry and a barrier to exit. So if you take space and you can equip it relatively cheaply, that's great. But what's to stop somebody else with ping pong or axe throwing or puzzle games or the other things for coming up at moderate investment that takes a significant slice of what you're doing away? If you don't have something that is so unique that it keeps them there and everybody can compete against you, it works for a while in a certain place, and there's a certain portion that's going to do it in a very sophisticated way. I mean, I've been to Putt Shack, and their bar and restaurant is just wonderful. They're doing a great job. But somebody else can do an even better food and beverage or a competing food and beverage thing with a slightly different attraction. And, how many times am I going to go miniature golf?
And so a lot of people within the FEC industry saw this, right? You see that first year you open and you get this rush because people love things new. And Randy White, whether you like him or hate him, I love his insights. And it's that second and third year. How do you keep people interested in something, and how do you refresh? And do you see that same thing with your operations, which are mostly resort based? Because you're kind of like, feeding off of their traffic, as you've said, right? Is that something that you are concerned about? And I guess that tethers into how much refresh do you have to do in your locations versus maybe if you were a standalone FEC?
I think one of the things that we have done in all of our locations, our standalones and everything, is I think we probably have the highest net capital investment every year, meaning we refresh faster than anybody else. I believe in technology. I believe in smart people. And I think one of the big problems that people have had is in the years past, at least, they have not invested enough. They think, well, I can start to rake it off the table. And that leads to a whole nother investment problem where if you don't keep up with it, it gets worse because that investment is necessary to keep yourself healthy. Well, now it's changed a little bit. It used to be, I need a new pinball, or I need a new redemption game, or I need a new basketball game, whatever it is. Well, now it's I need a new attraction. And that attraction you have to think twice on. And that's why I'd hope that, and that's why we like VR. I think I counted up 23 different systems we're operating right now. And the same thing with axe throwing. We've come through evolutions of that one. We've come through evolutions of escape rooms, and we're doing a couple of other things right now. We've gone into iron rides and things like that. But it's all because I want to have a few different things that are complementary and know that I can get enough time out of them to pay for the investment, but also be prepared that says, like VR right now, one of the problems that's happening with VR outside of 5 or 6 items, most of them depreciate so quickly, it's like a bad Yugo. It's great the first year you get it, and then you want to get rid of it as quickly as you can, but there's nobody there to buy it.
So what's your favorite? So I'm going to get you on the hot seat a little bit since you opened the door. What's your favorite VR attraction right now?
The favorite is the one that returns the best ROI, really. But the two different things. We have stuck it through with zero latency. So in terms of what it delivers, to this date, I haven't seen something that hits all the buttons, both in terms of size and finally getting down to a technological cost that makes it exciting to do. So this is not a spiritual plug for them because there are problems with it. They're now on generation 3 or coming out with generation 3, which I think both physically and financially will probably work a lot better.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is the only VR that I would really unequivocally say has worked for us is the arcade game come VR, like Rabbids and Kong. They have a return. Almost all the other stuff that's out there, and I don't mean to be dismissive about it because some of the stuff is really exciting and go from there, doesn't stand the test of time. Yeah. And if I'm wrong on that one, then prove it to me by coming to buy my used equipment, my used VR equipment, and I'll sell it to you at a great price. There's just not enough buyers for it right now, which is the testament to what people believe about it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you've nailed it. I do think that the new zero latency stuff and just FTC disclosure, I have no relationship with zero latency anymore, but I think their Gen 3 finally gets where it's going to be. And I think you're going to see a lot more companies now that everybody's standardizing on Focus 3, that all-in-one headset that's really perfect for the market. You're going to see a lot of competition in that space. And you're going to see it's going to become like you have the streaming wars with Netflix and Disney and Hulu. You're going to see the free roam VR wars now in the next couple of years, which is going to be great for operators, I think, because you'll have a standardized hardware platform and people competing for your content dollars.
Well, that's the real problem with it. You need to have, for this technology to work, you need to have scale, and we haven't had that. So standardizing, it gives you a chance to get replacement parts. I mean, the supply chain is broken every place. So if you can finally get something that you can rely upon, that's standard. It's you and I have had that discussions where we were talking about, protected areas for technology and everything. It doesn't make sense. McDonald's works, and Burger King found out very quickly that the best way to cite the right Burger King is next to a McDonald's. And it would mean that you're giving enough choice to people, but it was also giving legitimacy to that category. And it did that over years. Same thing for us. I mean, the more of the same thing goes out there, the more in the public mind you're saying, oh, I've seen that before. I guess it must be okay. I haven't tried it. I'll give that a chance. And so even if it's not exactly the same experience, that the manufacturer may have something different, if the platforms are similar so that we can keep up with this stuff and afford it, it'll be great. And I think that's one of the big problems. I've seen beautiful equipment out there. I mean, there's lots of Omni is they're terrific people. And there's lots of wonderful stuff out there that works so well. But if it's so customized that you make 5 of them, 50 of them, 200 of them, it's not enough to scale and get a return on.
Yeah, and it's been hard. I think Rabbids, they've been at it for more than LAI's been at it for more than 5 years, and I think they maybe recently or so have crossed 1,000 units, and that was a month's production run back in the good old days, right?
That's
and they're
correct.
by far, I think, the biggest deployment of VR systems out there is still after 5 years only 1,000 units. So it's still a low volume business.
I've got a great story related to VR. We got one of the first VRs, first Rabbids that was out there. And we were testing with them, and they were kind enough to do it. And we put it out, and they said, well, what do you want to price it at? And I said, $6, I think seems the right amount. And I meant for 2 seats, but not being extremely clear, they put it out at $6 per player. So 2 swipes. So we were getting $12. And I said, what are you crazy going from that? Until we saw the numbers coming in. I said, wow, what a genius thought that is.
You're the second person that's told me that story, by the way. There was another operator. I think Linda Fernandez said the same thing, where she made that same mistake of brilliance. Yeah, it's funny. What are you seeing from pricing of VR? Like, does it continue to surprise you on the pricing side? Are you like, are you starting to see sensitivities now that it's more common?
It's coming down a little bit. We still charge, sort of a premium, because most of it we have to, especially during COVID days, we had to clean it a lot more completely and service it more completely. And now we have headsets. Americans are gorillas, so they rip off headsets and damage the guns and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a premium there, but it's coming pretty much. It's not so much of a premium over a standard game or a standard attraction.
Yeah, interesting. But the costs have not come down in an equivalent fashion, which makes the ROI more challenging, I would imagine.
God bless, Raw Thrills and all the people that make these things, because I know from there. And they have, as they're producing more of these, been able to inch up the price. But it's still, we're getting an ROI on that stuff. I mean, Kong is just a phenomenal game. It's simple, takes up the right amount of space, doesn't need a lot of employee support and everything that's there. So you can get a return on it, and there's a market for it. A lot of the other things that are there, we experimented with a lot of European, Chinese manufactured VR. For our market, maybe in China, where there's thousands of them out there, it works better. But it's just, the problem is getting them fixed, repaired, working, getting their code to it and upgrading it hasn't worked long-term for us. We still have some things that are terrific. I mean, we have a lot of the egg pods and things like that. We bought them inexpensively and we got a return, but there are probably some other better things that we're going to have to replace them with. And going back to the price point, most of the things we can say, we can give you an experience that's 6, 7, 8 minutes long with a headset, and it's a great environment, and we can still price it the same way other general amusements are.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm gonna give you can we do a rapid fire round?
Sure.
Dave and Buster's main event merger. What do you think?
Main event, and everybody there should be thanking their lucky stars for the investment community that's out there. I think it makes an awful lot of sense. I think it probably reinvigorates Dave and Buster's in a different way, and probably adds an awful lot of systems to the main event side of things that are there. So I think it's a good balancing act, but anytime you bring two big tribes together, the integration is going to be difficult, I'm sure. Wait and see, but financially, I think it makes a lot of sense.
IAPA as a trade association for FECs, or do we need something else?
Wow, that's a loaded question. It would be nice to have something else. It's probably irrelevant to have something else. The reason being is we don't get together that much. Our industry is not really wonderful at education, although we would aspire to be in some respects. The easiest way to get an education is what has always been there, the open door that is our industry, to walk into somebody's store and say, hey, can you show me around? And most people do. And that's the best education you're going to get. IAPA, even though I still think that the FEC is still either the number one or two constituency within it, is given short shrift within that community that's there. And the bigger the bureaucracy, the less input they take. And that's almost always been the case, and probably even more so now. But they produce a great trade show.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love the trade show. Even though I feel like I got to tell you, my recovery period after an IAPA seems to become longer and longer as I'm getting older and older. Are you finding that?
I understand that. And that's without drinking as heavily as I used to. So.
Yeah, me too. Favorite amusement industry news source?
Oddly enough, I'd say the IAPA snipper service that they do is the clipper service that they do is probably the easiest way to get meaningful stuff if you read it. But the best way to do it is networking. If you are concerned about something, we have so many wonderful people in this industry that they open. I mean, they talk honestly and openly, and the problems are usually the same. So I would say between those two things. I love replay. I don't want to short shrift Eddie and Ingrid and anything, because they are just wonderful people, and thank God that they're there.
Yeah, they're holding on. The trade, anybody in the print business that's holding on. Kudos to them for fighting the good fight. What's missing? What would you like to see in VR? Like, what's the thing you wish for that no one's come out with yet?
More things that are not zombie. There's only the zombie thing continue for eons that are there. In light of the fact that we tend to be a violent society, I'd like to find things that really explore the depths of VR in a better way. I mean, when Void put in the Spider-Man thing, the Ghostbusters thing, and went from there, I think they were on a track that was really highlighting what you might be able to do. The difficulty on this one is to be able to afford it and then have somebody with some brave capital up front to do this. I think the change is going to come with the experiences, whether it's a Meow Wolf type or Area 15 or 2-Bit Circus and that kind of stuff, has some insight into where the industry is probably going to have to go, which is this is a experiential generation or generations, and they want to have something that has some meaning to them, that offers them different insight, maybe a little art, a little music and things like that combine the two things together, because you can get content at home better. I still love going to the movie theater, but to be honest with myself, I've gone to movies twice since COVID, but we just finished off a 46 episode series that are there, so I know where I'm spending my time. Esports,
do you think there's a there? Or is it all just hype for our industry?
I keep asking you and other people in the industry I guess I'm from Missouri on this one. You got to show me. There is the large scale stuff. I mean, the numbers are impressive for arena based things, but nobody's been able to show me on a moderate investable scale for us mere mortals how you get a return on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think Omni and Jan has done a great job in touting that kind of stuff. And so there's something to that methodology, just the same way, air hockeys or darts or pool leagues that formed in foosball and things like that. But on a huge, let me drop everything I'm doing, spend, $1 million for 200 or 300 seat space, I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't either. I haven't seen it either. And the 2-Bit, you mentioned 2-Bit Circus. They've got, and obviously you do a lot of work with Great Wolf Lodge, and so the management I'm assuming at 2-Bit, and they've just done the SPAC deal where they're going to open some hotels. And so what's your thoughts on their, I don't know how closely you followed it, but their new strategy as far as taking that 2-Bit experience and making it more of resort based?
We talk, including this past week, I was talking to them, and Kim, their CEO, is just a wonderful executive and a wonderful person. And they have a lot of thoughtful, the Bushnells are great people and thoughtful, and a lot of the people they're bringing into it with their next location in Dallas. I mean, the problem with Los Angeles was it's in the wrong place. But a lot of the things that they're tending to indicate a direction. Do I think it's financially as viable for the resorts and everything? We'll see. I still think that you can get out over your skis too quickly in some of these things, and you need to get a return and really suss them out. And it's a combination. I'm fond of saying we all justify our own expenditure. You buy a car, doesn't matter what car. You buy a Volkswagen, I buy a Chevy, he buys a Subaru. You're going to say it's the greatest thing that's there because you're justifying your challenge for that one. Sometimes you have to step back and say, am I being honest with myself? Am I going to get the return out of this that I need in the overall, especially where something takes an awful lot of human capital to keep it going?
Well, George Smith, dude, I think you with the little beard thing going, I feel like that most interesting man in the amusement industry might fit. I always find our conversations just titillating, and I really appreciate, and you're so generous with your insights. And what's going on with F2FEC to that? Is that are we going to see that again, or?
I hope so. We have three amigos who should be in walkers in some cases, and that's the problem. So what happened was COVID took a wind out of our sails, and we were going to have an opening. We were going to have it last May, but we still were getting such pushback from people that they were still scared in 21. And then my two esteemed partners in this one have lives as well. So I think there will be. We get together in August, and I hope to announce it because we'd like to. We made a promise to the industry, and we certainly never did it for the money.
I know you can't. It's really hard to make money running events.
Yeah, but it's been satisfying, and we probably individually got as much as we gave because we made friends and we learned about ourselves and we learned about our businesses, and that's what it was really all about.
Yeah, well, it was mine and many other people's favorite event, and I certainly hope we see another one. So
we'll see if we can do that. But
yeah, cool.
Very kind and generous. It's always fun. I hope the family was good last week. So
yeah, it was actually my first tourist, like real being a tourist. Like we're in a different city every day, and it was pure insanity. And now I had to get back to work to recover from the vacation. Mark of a good vacation. George Smith, I really appreciate you. I continue to watch what you're doing in the world, and you're doing amazing work, and good luck with this next transition.
We'll see how everything goes. So,
all right, bud. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
And I'm muted. I'm not muted. George Smith from Family Entertainment Group, kind enough to share his insights with us and with you. And there's a couple of questions that I just wanted to address. One from Guy in Switzerland about who is with TrueVR, one of the big free roam platforms out there, asking about Hollowgate. And look, I think in the FEC industry, anything that requires an attendant right now is being looked at really critically. And I've challenged a lot of those companies with those compact 4-player systems, Hollowgate, Minority Media, who the guys out of Belgium, Box Blaster. There's one in Europe, and to try to figure out how to make those unattended. And I think it's possible. I was recently in Finland. Valomotion has a 6-player arena. It's not VR, it's augmented, it's kind of mixed reality attraction, but they've done a really good job investing in a UX that allows people to move through by themselves without an attendant. So I think it's possible, and I think it's going to be required, and we'll see what happens. Hollowgate does have a big Ghostbusters launch coming at IAAPA, maybe before IAAPA. So they're working closely with Sony on developing a new Ghostbusters game based on the franchise reboot, which is really exciting. And so I can't wait to see that. So that's what's going on with Hollowgate. But right now, unfortunately, there's probably more used Hollowgates being sold on the market than there are new ones going in. So if you're looking for a deal right now, anything that's attended, you should probably reach out to distribution if you work through CoinOp distribution and see what's available. I just want to thank everybody for joining. We're still playing around with some new tools, and Sebastian, you're a little skeptical about unattended. I think within a family entertainment center context, it works. I think that depending on where you're going, it may or may not work. But most people, by the way, on the hygiene thing, and I kind of predicted this a long time ago, nobody cares. I've been watching people going back in post-pandemic and putting shit all over their face, touching everything. Like, it was just the whole hygiene theater thing, I think, was overblown. But we're playing around with some new tools. This interview with George was actually recorded a couple of weeks ago, the day before they announced being recapped and sold to another private equity firm. And so their company is really successful. They've got a new lead investor coming in, which is going to give them more capital and more energy to grow. So it's going to be really interesting to see where George and the FEG team takes their business going forward. If you got any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. My producer, Kylie, is trying to get my attention.
I think LinkedIn's lagging quite a little bit. So
Yep.
People watching on LinkedIn won't have a chance to ask questions yet. So you might want to tap dance for a minute.
Yeah, I'll tap dance. Da, 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 da. Thanks, Tony. Hey, Tony, what's going on? Handsome Tony. George is the best, and he really is great at sharing. So just so you know, some new shows coming up. Reached out to Brent Bushnell. Brent, if you're watching, try to get an update. We talked a little bit about Two Bit Circus and what they're doing, and they've got these grand plans. They merged with a SPAC, which is kind of a blind pool shell company, to raise a bunch of money, and they're going to move into the themed hotel business and create these 2-Bit Circus hotels, which are really, resorts, which is really interesting. And hoping to get the guys from Third Spot, Amp One Up Entertainment, on to talk about a new location they're opening in Atlanta, because I'm really fascinated with their corporate culture and how they're creating community within their FECs. And so we got a couple of questions come in. How do VR Soul Machines compare in revenue to other standalone stations out there? I think the Beat Saber game still crushes it. Unfortunately, when Facebook acquired Beat Games, they pulled licenses from that, so no new Beat Saber games can go out, but the people that have them seem to be doing really well with them. I think the Star Wars game taps into the Star Wars audience, which is about 35% of the population. And so revenue-wise, seems to do about 80% of what Beat Saber does. There's a new game out there called Rhythmatic, which is kind of trying to follow up on Beat Saber. I think there's a real opportunity there for these music rhythm games in VR. They seem to be really popular. I think the challenge is going to be finding the right one. And there's I know VR Soul is working on some new stuff to bring to IAPA, which I really can't talk about yet, but they, as far as compared to other standalone stations, I'm not sure what that means. If you want to chime back in there, Live Real. Eric, I think I can put these up on the screen. Let's see. I don't even like things like rabbits and Kong listed as no attendant needed. They need eyes on them to prevent damage. Yeah, a lot of operators put the VR near the redemption counter or near the service counter where they can see it. But look, there's 1,000 rabbits out there in the market. And I don't know how many Kongs, but that product's proven itself. And whether you want to call it attended or attendant light, or you got to keep an eye on it, VR obviously is not just a hardened arcade game yet. Hopefully we'll get there. But I think, your mileage may vary as far as how you do that. I will definitely be sending out replay. This will be posted on all the channels permanently. It'll be on my YouTube channel. It'll also be on my website. If you go to beingvirtual.tv, all of the episodes of the Being Virtual show going back to the deep dives in 2019 are archived on my website, beingvirtual.tv. So you can go back and binge to your heart's content. So Sebastian, I feel like I should bring you on screen. You got a lot to say. Seeing the bizarre situation here that we see founders' interest in building new venues, even sitting, there's definitely a massive interest in location-based VR, location-based entertainment. You heard George talk a little bit about the mall market, where malls are investing in it. And I think that often we see this. Look, I've been almost 35 years in this business. I've seen these peaks and valleys and cycles happen in this industry where, people get excited and they over invest, and then there's a retrenchment and it comes and goes. And it does feel like post-pandemic, there's a bit of an excitement. And look, FECs are doing really well. Everybody that I talk to is setting records for revenues this summer. And so I think there's this revenge entertainment happening where people were tired of being cooped up, and they're really rushing back in. And it's really just the labor market and the supply channel that is still broken. And I don't know if the labor market is broken or not, or it's just going to right size where service workers actually get to make a living wage at some point. I was just at a trampoline park in Santa Rosa, California, where there's a big sign in the front that said, paying $18 an hour to start to work at a trampoline park. And so, the wage inflation is definitely happening. And so, Rhythmatic 2 definitely have played it. I've just full disclosure, I've been working with vArsenal now for about 3 years. They're one of my clients, and they've added some punching into the slicing to try to make the game a little bit more interesting. And so that product is rolling out in the marketplace, and it seems to be doing okay, though honestly it's not earning as well as Beat Saber. So I try not to bullshit people, and it's doing well, but it ain't Beat Saber, unfortunately. Not much is. Those guys really nailed it. So any other questions you want to throw out? I got to go over to LinkedIn. I don't know if LinkedIn's coming over. I'm going to check out the different platforms, but I kind of feel like that might be it. So anyway, I'm in Portugal right now. It is 7:45 p.m. Go to bobcooney.com, sign up for my blog, beingvirtual.tv, so you can get notifications of new Being Virtual shows and deep dives. My intention is to continue to doing the deep dives and bring the best operators, the most innovative operators in the market to you. And hopefully we can all keep learning and getting better at this new VR thing, because it's still got its challenges. And so, that's it. This is Bob. Thank you all for your attention and joining in. And you can always reach out to me, bobc@bobcooney.com or vrbob@bobcooney.com. I'm there for you. So we'll look forward to seeing you soon on another episode of the Being Virtual Show.